Well, we're carrying on our talk about the school league tables, and this, I have to keep stating, is unofficial. This is purely work that you've done. It's in your hands as you view these figures online at the PAGS site, by the way. What's the next one we're doing here?
We're looking at reading.
Reading, yeah.
I'm just carrying on from our conversation, Paul. I do want to say there are obviously the contextual factors I've mentioned, special educational needs. The other issues you cannot take into account is how much parents get involved with their child.
What, tutoring at home, you mean?
Tutoring at home, well,
or at school?
Individual help that parents give. Some parents give a lot of support to their children, others less so. There's a great deal of evidence that shows if a parent engages with their children, helps with their homework, helps with their reading at home, that of course raises performance. Another issue is the number of private tutors. My eldest daughter went to Arbery's primary school. Half of her class, at some stage or other, have used private tutors. So it begs the question, who's getting the results? The school or the tutor. But it's a parent's right to use a tutor. And many of the tutors, incidentally, of course, are primary school teachers who do it as a sideline.
Yes. Right.
Moving on to reading.
School Val Gilts again?
School Val Gilt, top. 100% got level 5, 30 out of 30. Doon is another consistently good school. That was second in that table. Doon has always been a very, very good school.
Small school?
Small school, 18 in their class size, so getting there. Mm-hmm. Down at the bottom, we're getting Manor Park, with 7%, that's one pupil out of 13. St Mary's, Roman Catholic, 5 out of 34. Bearing in mind, though, high English as additional language at St Mary's. So time and time again, I'm showing you.
Yeah, you mentioned how you've got these high performers. Are you getting the same ones appearing
generally,
overall?
By and large, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there are 5 schools on Island that were below the Isle of Man average in everything. Below the Isle of Man average, and bearing in mind the Isle of Man average was well below the last comparable England levels average, which was 2015.
Okay.
And I think those schools off the top of my head were Henry Bloom Noble, Bunschool Ramsayre, which has had some really bad results actually. I'd be interested to look at Bunschool Ramsayre later. Victoria Road, can't remember the other ones now on the top of my head.
That's all right,
excuse me.
Loads of stuff here.
There's loads of stuff here. Yeah, so the 5 really underperforming schools: Bunschool Ramsayre, Henry Bloom Noble, Manor Park, St Mary's Roman Catholic, and Victoria Road.
According to your figures, which you've got, I know. I keep
do
that
it
because and the response should be. You're hoping.
I'm hoping more parents get out there and get more and more information on their respective schools. Challenge their governors, because this asks big questions about what the governors are doing at these schools. Now, the other question, or the other issue I want to take forward from this, Paul, is I've done it just for last year. I've now got the data for previous years, so I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to see, right, has Bunschool Ramsayre continually underperformed? Has Victoria Road School continually underperformed? If so, why? Because you get strong and weak year groups. You'll probably remember that from school.
Sure.
But do you get consistently weak year groups, or is there something else? School Val Gilt's done something right, but is this a freak year for School Val Gilt?
And you wonder, of course, when they do link up, if you're seeing dips, although it could be completely separate from
Absolutely.
that. But you never know, do you, what's lying ahead? But
you never know.
Well, keep going.
Keep going. What have we got next? Science. Again, who do you think's top?
Yeah, okay.
School Val Gilt, 100%. With joint top, 100% of that. So the science coordinator, the literacy coordinator at School Val Gilt deserve a gong as far as I'm concerned. They're doing a fantastic job.
At what point in that table do you start to get worried? I mean, is the middle okay? Because I mean, you've got these levels against the UK.
Yeah, the middle's okay. It's satisfactory. I mean, I think we should be looking to match England's levels at least. We want a world-class education system. We must have some way of benchmarking that. We can't just take it for granted that what Hamilton House says is true anymore, I'm afraid. This is why I think they were resistant in putting this material out.
Well, you can see why, because there's going to be questions asked after this goes public, and questions that should have been probably raised by now. Maybe they are being raised behind the scenes, of course. But
well, maybe they are. I mean, I'm sure they are. But as I said, please, your viewers, if they look at the paper online, it looks a bit daunting at first. Sit down with a cup of coffee or a glass of Shiraz and go through it and say, right, the methodology is not perfect. I've explained my methodology because, at the end of the day, if the department wanted to do a true comparison, they could, because they have the data. They know exactly the effect, or I would hope they know the effect of free school meals on attainment at various schools. That begs another freedom of information question, doesn't it, Paul?
How many have you done?
For the Department of Education, I'd probably say about between 15 and 16 or so over they cover whole issues, including suspension data, for instance,
And other people have put something, you say as well?
Oh, others have. I've used other individuals' data, not just mine. I mean, there have been questions.
You're not being vexatious, so are you? I think there's that magic word that they were using that you might get stopped if you girls too many.
I shall use my legal entitlement. I'd bring it on, Paul.
And if they started charging you, would you still?
I would still do it. Yeah,
right.
Because I think this information is too important. English parents have it. Why are we being treated as second-class citizens?
Okay, well, let's finish.
Why can't we make our own informed decisions?
Let's finish the other stuff.
And the final one is the contextual one. Paul, there are more online, covering how we compare with England. And this is very important for parents. This shows the percentage on each school roll rather than the last year, because you can go so far. It gives you some idea of the socio-economic demography of the school. So the number of pupils on the school that have free school meals. As I've said, there's a link between that and attainment. The number of people who have special educational needs. A child with special educational needs, level 4, fantastic achievement. I'm the first to acknowledge that. English additional language, we've got into that at all. The top of those is Henry Bloom Noble and St Mary's. But you've got a number of schools, 6 or 7 or even 8, I think, there, that don't have any English additional language students there. So St Thomas's, none. So, Michael, none.
Yeah, but ones that do have lots of foreign students, I think that's probably the best way of putting it, where English is not their first language. Do you see any correlation that it does dip down?
In literacy, yes.
It does.
Yeah, and probably mathematics
as well. Is that because the school's being held up, presumably by having to help?
Well, they've got to help those, but then it's a question of resources, it's more and more data, what the governor's doing, and so on. One of the freedom information requests I've done is asking for certain schools, I haven't done it all yet, the school improvement plans. I've had teachers come to me and say, I've never seen my school improvement plan until it appeared online on freedom information request. That is beggars belief. Yeah. And it tells you what are I have a big issue with what.
Would you like to sit down with Mr. Cragine or something? Or have you had one even? Has he invited you in?
Mr. Cragine has been quite terse. Terse with me. I did an interview with Manx Radio some while ago on this and said I'd quite happily meet and debate with Minister Cragine or the Director of Education. No response. I think they're entrenched in their position. I'm trying to put the information out there. They're being reactive to me. I'd rather they be proactive, actually, and produce data, because league tables are here. It's a fact of life. They're coming. If I don't produce them, someone else will. And I'm going to be looking at GCSE attainment now, because this coming year we've got some of the first results in some subjects for the IGCSE. That's going to be interesting. How have we done? We've made that decision. How are we going to do in maths, for instance, is going to be very interesting. I hope we get the same percentage at least of pupils who get these pass, which is basically an A star to C.
Away from that headline though, should parents be concerned, or is that too general?
I think some parents should be very concerned, yes.
Right.
Some should be relieved. What's this going to drive? Is it going to be divisive? That's the accusation that's going to be thrown at me when I say it in response to that. Will the department produce it for secondary schools? I can go online and see with their own statistics that actually, in terms of GCSE passes at A star to C, including English and Maths, St Ninians has been bottom in 4 out of the last 5 years in terms of percentages.
Right. Wow.
That's on their website. Yep. They've done it for secondary schools. That's only 5 of those. I've done it for 32 primary schools.
Well, the PAG website is all
PAG website, it's there. And I commend it to everybody.
Well, I commend you. I got this idea you're sitting there with your quill and hour upon hour going through data. Yeah. But was it even when they gave it to you, was it tricky to work out what they gave you? Was it quite simplistic?
Oh, if you look online at some of the freedom of information responses, it's the most appalling to read spreadsheet, buried away. Why do I want this data? I mean, I've had to, at one point, my very first question I asked, they told me they didn't have the data. So when I pointed out where they could find it, mysteriously it appeared that was average point scores, because they'd already published the island average point score in the Joint Strategic Needs Analysis. And I said, well, to get the island average, you must have had each individual school.
I think they should have you inside the tent, by the way. I mean, if you weren't doing this, nobody else would have been doing it probably. I mean, it's taken that sort of will to...
Well, I've also, I'm conscious, as I've said before, I've spent 9 years at the school gate, and parents compare teachers, they compare departments, they compare schools. But this gives them something more informed to compare them with. It's no good saying, oh, X is a rubbish school, Y is brilliant. Well, what are you basing that on? Because we're told so by the department. All schools have their strengths and weaknesses, and the department focus on the 6 R's, their resourcefulness, relationships, etc. Actually, responsibility isn't one of those, which I find quite interesting, but I prefer to focus on the 3 R's. But that's my take as a parent. Other parents will have a different take, but I re-emphasise good academics, good behaviour, good personal life skills are not mutually exclusive.